Arlene Dulovitz. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Arlene Dulovitz. You're commenting on the wrong video. Can I suggest that you go out of that video and enter the right video? Michael Stein, morning. Look for the video that says Friday, 1st of May. That's the video you should be in. Larry Cohen, good morning. Shirley Feldman, good morning. Thank you for joining. See, we have some, Monty Isero, thank you. Good morning, Monty, on YouTube. Boker Tov, Robert and Maureen Levy. Our students are now logging in. You can either log in on Facebook Live or YouTube Live. Good morning, Linda and Jaime Drew. Brian Feinstein on YouTube, thank you. Please let us know in the comments that you're with us. We'd love to hear from you and engage with you. We'll just give it a minute or so, a few minutes to people to log on. Lionel Rubin, good morning. Good morning, Lionel. Great. Good morning, Shimon. Amen. Chaim Reuben Ben Aliyah. Before Shalem, Amen. Manfred Kalman, good morning. Norman Stein, good morning. We'll say Shabbat Shalom when we're done, Norman. As we finish, we'll end off with Shabbat Shalom. In the meantime, good morning, Boker Tov. If you're just coming online now, please let us know you're with us. Okay, people are logging on now, which is good. If you are just joining us, please do let us know you're with us. It's always nice to know. Gabriela Kwasnik, good morning. Our numbers picking up here nicely. Welcome, everyone. If you're just logging in now, let us know. Evan Milner, good morning. We have also on YouTube, Selwyn Kahanovitz, Vega Sager. I like this. This is nice. Our numbers are picking up here nicely. So thank you for joining us all. We'll give it another minute or so before we begin our discussions. Myrna Sachs, thank you for joining this morning. Thank you. Good morning on this public holiday. In case we know family and at home, we now have a public holiday. So here we are. We're going to give it a minute or so while people are still logging on. And we welcome all those who have already logged on. Just give me a moment as we wait for our students to load. We have a great crowd here on YouTube and on Facebook. Good to see everyone here. Eileen Braz, good morning. Good to see you here. Always good to have your participation. Yesterday you were on fire, Eileen, so hopefully today we'll continue that vibe. Okay, just before we begin, a wonderful morning to one and all. Good morning, and Helen and Brian Feinstein. I see you're featuring on Facebook and on YouTube. So you're figuring out the world of technology and social media, so well done. That too is a silver lining in what we're dealing with. Good morning, Rav. Thank you. Thank you, Raylene, on YouTube. Okay, so we've got comments coming through and greetings. Good morning, greetings, both on Facebook and on YouTube. Daryl and Shelley Smith, good morning. Okay, so we're learning. This the silver lining of what we're experiencing right now is that we're all figuring out how social media works. Facebook, YouTube, Zoom, and other platforms. So I'm happy to be part of the experience together with you all. And thank you for your comments in the chat box. If you have any if you're still logging on, we would love you to introduce yourselves. Just before we begin, please make sure to share this video. It's easier to share this video on Facebook. So just press share and it will go to all your contacts. People will know what you're up to. And hopefully will join as well. Who knows? David Ginsburg, good morning. Thank you for joining us today. Okay, so folks, ladies and gentlemen, let's get going with today's discussion. Something that's unbelievably mind-boggling. And that is to discuss the current affairs of the coronavirus in the context of the time of the year in which we find ourselves in. This is not the first time that we are experiencing a pandemic. Many people, articles, journalists, scientists are referring to the 1918 pandemic, flu. Good morning, Steve Nossel, Shalom Trieger, Hilly Lipworth. Thank you for all joining us. Many people are talking about the 1918 pandemic, which killed out many. But the truth is, in Judaism, we know of a pandemic that goes back a lot longer than 1 century. It's a pandemic that we talk about every year, this time of the year. And it's scary how relevant it is right now. Mark Wachenheimer, good morning. It's scary how relevant the pandemic of 1900 years ago is to today. I'm referring to the pandemic of Rabbi Akiva's students. Rabbi Akiva's students, we know they died between Pesach and Shavuot during the Omer period. And ever since then, ever since their terrible, tragic deaths as a result of the pandemic that spread among the 24,000 students of Rabbi Akiva, they all died, except for a handful. And to think back, every year we talk about this. Every year during Sfirat HaOmer, we talk about the death of the 24,000. But it hasn't hit us as strongly as it's hit us now. It means so much more today than it's ever meant before. Morning, Shimon Peres. So Shimon Peres, as you can see on Facebook, is posting that the students of Rabbi Akiva died from Askara. And Askara was a pandemic that affected the breathing. Their breathing, can you imagine? Their breathing was affected as a result of Askara. How scary and relevant this is to today. Good morning, Trevor Gerson. Thank you for joining us. It's scary to think 1900 years ago, students of Rabbi Akiva died out as a result of a pandemic that affected their breathing system. It was called Askara. And we're reliving this. We're reliving this by counting the Omer and by observing the laws of the Omer, but we're also reliving this because our generation is now experiencing a pandemic that's affecting the breathing system. And so one can't ignore the connection that's there. An interesting observation, which sort of also fits into place now. One question we can have is, why was it that the pandemic spread, Askara, the pandemic of breathing, spread among the students of Rabbi Akiva, 24,000 of them, but we don't hear about the rest of the generation being affected. We don't hear about the public being affected as a result of this pandemic. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. We know about Rabbi Akiva's students, 24,000 students died, but that was it. Interesting, no? So maybe, Ruth Kaplan, good morning. Thank you for joining us and posting on the group on Facebook. So maybe we can say, or understand it better now, is that who gets affected? Those living together. If you live together and you interact with each other, that's how you pass on the virus from one person to the next. So simply speaking, we can say that possibly the reason why The pandemic hit 24,000 students of Rabbi Akiva specifically, and not necessarily did it hit the rest of the community, is because the students of Rabbi Akiva were sitting side by side in the same tents, in the same room, in the same environment, interacting with each other, touching each other, living with each other, and so they passed on the pandemic from one to the other. Perhaps this may explain why the pandemic hit them and not necessarily the rest of the generation. That's a simple meaning. There's obviously more depth to that. Good morning, Stan Brask. Thank you for joining. I see people are still logging on Facebook and on YouTube. Wonderful to have you all with us. So thank you. Let us know you're with us. Just say good morning, morning greetings. It'll be nice to know who's with us. Shimon, perhaps we can say it was a kapara for those on such a high level. Good morning, Charmaine Shatkin. So yes, Shimon, good point. That they took the knock on behalf of the rest of the generation. A good suggestion, a good point. But what was wrong with Rabbi Akiva's students? What was wrong? What happened? What went wrong that Rabbi Akiva's students were hit with such a big knock of the pandemic that killed out 24,000 students of Rabbi Akiva? The Gemara, the Talmud tells us, Shelo nahagu kavod ze bazeh, which literally translates as they didn't show respect. Lo nahagu kavod. We know what kavod means. Ironic, hey? Kavod. Don't know who created COVID-19. Kavod. Who knows? But some want to say it's the glory of Hashem. We have to recognize the kavod of Hashem. But nonetheless, let's get back to Rabbi Akiva. So the Gemara says, the Talmud tells us the reason why Rabbi Akiva's students suffered what they had suffered is because lo nahagu kavod ze bazeh. They didn't show respect to one another. And as a result, they were punished harshly with the spreading of this virus, askara, that affected their breathing system. Why their breathing system? Because the way they spoke to each other, the way they interacted with each other wasn't appropriate. Their respect, their kavod to one another wasn't appropriate. Good morning, Cheryl and Diamond. Thank you for joining us. How's that possible? Surely they were on such a high level. Shimon, good point. We'll come to that. So they didn't show respect, meaning they didn't speak nicely. And as a result of not speaking nicely, they were affected by askara. It's a pandemic that affected their breathing system. They weren't able to breathe properly. Good morning, Dennis Besarabi. Thank you for joining us. So we need to understand that. Shimon's question on Facebook is a good question. How is it possible? Surely they were on a high level. That's true. Surely they were on a high level. In fact, we know that Rabbi Akiva was the preacher and teacher of love, of Ahavat Israel. So I'm adding to Shimon's question. Good morning, Dave and Joan Block. I'm adding to Shimon's question. How is it possible they were on such a high level? They were the students of Rabbi Akiva, the giants of the Mishnaic era, and yet they weren't showing kavod ze bazeh. This question grows when we start to understand who Rabbi Akiva was. That only adds to the question. But before I get there, I want to welcome everyone to our daily learning session here this morning. Thank you all very much for joining us. We've got lots of interaction today on both YouTube and Facebook. I enjoy when our students who are logging on give us our blessings and greetings on the group, on the chat. So that way we know you're here. That way we know we can interact with you. So if you are with us live on Facebook or YouTube, just put into the comments of the chat what was unique about Rabbi as the preacher and the teacher of Ahavat Israel. Anybody, if you ask anyone, which sage was associated with Ahavat Israel the most? Answer is Rabbi Akiva. As we say, Rabbi Akiva Omer. By the way, I want to bring it to your attention. The pasuk, the verse of V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, actually features in this week's Torah portion. No sound. That's strange. No sound on YouTube. That's what I'm hearing now. Is the sound back on YouTube? Let us know if you can hear us on YouTube. For some reason, I'm getting comments that there's no connection. Give me a second here. No, that looks okay. Is the sound back? No connection. Is the sound back on YouTube? Very strange that there's no sound. Let's just wait for everyone to join us. I see people are still joining. Better now. Okay, good. Sorry about that. Shimon, perhaps on their playing field, a lot more was required of them. Exactly. Thank you. Okay, guys, so we're moving on. The verse of V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha is actually referred to in this week's parsha. Parshas Kedoshim, the second parsha of this week, focuses on V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. But it's not Rabbi Akiva's verse, it's a Torah verse. But Rabbi Akiva lived with it. He lived with V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. And then he said that V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha is the foundation of Judaism, the foundation of the entire Torah. So how is it possible that his students died out of lack of respect for each other? Hard to understand. I just want to share one story with you to show the love of Rabbi Akiva, to show the sensitivity of Rabbi Akiva. The Talmud tells us a story about Rabbi Akiva, that Rabbi Akiva, it doesn't say his name. The Talmud says that there was once a poor man who was battling to sustain and to provide for his family. So the Talmud says that this poor man decided one day he was going to leave his family for a good few months, and he was going to travel to the Galil, to the north of Israel, and there he would get a job. He would get a job as a farmer to help in the fields and shepherd the flock of the landlord, of the owner, of his employer. And so he goes to travel there, and you can imagine his family have nothing. And not only do they have nothing now, they're not going to see him for a good few months. They're not going to have anything from him, but he has to travel and he has to earn a living. And he travels there and he works and he works and he works, but the owner's not paying him. The owner's just giving him accommodation. That's what he's getting, accommodation, but pay he's not getting. As the few months come to an end, he says to his landlord, he says to the owner, I need to go now. I want to head back home. Now can you pay me? And the owner says, I have no money, sir. I have no money to pay you with. I'm extremely, extremely embarrassed, but I can't pay you. And so the ani, says the Talmud, the poor man, turns around with nothing. He's left his family. He's traveled for months away from his family to earn a living. And now he's about to head home without paying him at all. The Talmud tells us that as he's traveling out onto the road to head home, the owner, the farmer, the landlord runs after him and says to him, tell me, what did you think when I said to you that I'm not going to pay you and I can't pay you? What was going through your mind at that particular time? And the poor man says, to be honest, I only thought favorably of you. I thought to myself, well, perhaps he's donated his money to tzedakah. Perhaps he's donated his money to the Bet HaMikdash, to the temple. And because he gave his money to the temple, which was existent in that time, second temple, perhaps because he gave his money to tzedakah, to charity, this is why he can't pay me. And so I accepted. It is what it is. How can I blame you if you're doing righteously by giving tzedakah? This poor man in the Talmud, according to the commentaries, was Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva was a poor man, but he managed to see favorably in the other person. He managed to see that farmer and to judge him favorably. Not that he's holding back money from me. God forbid, heaven forbid, how can you hold back money from an employee? So he's not holding back money from me. He is giving his money to tzedakah, to charity. And so he's righteous. And for that, I have to forgive him for not being able to pay me. That was Rabbi Akiva's attribute. He was one of ahava, of love, of finding the zchut and the merit in each person. So where did his students go wrong? The Talmud says that the 24,000 students of Rabbi Akiva died as a result of a pandemic that affected their breathing system 1900 years ago. Because lo nohagu kavod b'zeh b'zeh, they didn't act respectfully. They didn't show kavod to one another. What went wrong? Rabbi Akiva is the preacher and the teacher of ahava, of love. What went wrong? Morning, Felicia Jenks. Thank you for joining us. If you have any comments or questions on our discussion of today, feel free to post them either in the comments on Facebook or YouTube. We've got a great crowd in both platforms. Close to 30 people on Facebook, 12 people on YouTube. So it's wonderful to have you all with us. Over 40 students here today. Wonderful. Unbelievable to be able to engage with you. If you have any questions. Also, one more point. I like always welcoming the out-of-towners. Any overseas participants? I don't know if Australia can be with us. Shabbos is coming in. But Israel, the States, let us know if we have some international students here with us today. It was that they didn't quote each other. Okay, so let me explain. I'll give you an answer. This is an answer that the Rebbe suggests, which is very, very powerful. And he says that there's a difference between ahava, love, to kavod, which means honor and respect. There's a major difference between those two. What does ahava mean? Ahava means we love each other. Why do we love each other? Because we're connected with each other. We're united with each other. Do you know that the gematria, the numerical value of ahava is 13. Aleph is 1, Hey is 5, Bet is 2, and Hey is 5. It comes to 13. It's the same numerical value as Echad. Aleph is 1, Chet is 8, Dalet is 4, that equals 13. Ahava and Echad are 1, because Ahava comes from unity, from togetherness. That's why the Kohanim who bless the community on Yom Tov, they say that we've been commanded to bless the nation be'ahava, with love, with oneness and unity, because otherwise we don't have that echad, the unity. So ahava comes out of unity. Ahava comes of feeling one. But there's a risk to that. I love everyone. I love everyone. But to actually respect them, respect their position, respect their differences, respect their position over my position, that's a whole new level. Do we love each other? We all absolutely love each other. Did the students of Rabbi Akiva love each other? Absolutely, they loved each other. If you go stop any Jew, wherever it may be, do you love a fellow Jew? I for sure love a fellow Jew. Do you respect a fellow Jew? Suddenly I can love him because he's a Jew. I can love him because he or she is a human being. So I love them as God's children. I love them. Do you respect them? See, respect demands acknowledgement of the differences between us. Ahava demands the acknowledgement of the unity between us. We love each other because we're united and connected with each other. We respect each other because I acknowledge your stand is different to my stand, and my stand is different to your stand. And there's a major difference. It's easier to love each other. It's more difficult to respect each other. I would say the following. Israel society, Israel, modern state of Israel society is a complicated society. We see it in the political field. It's a complicated society. I always marvel when I visit Israel that You got two sides of Yerushalayim, two sides of Jerusalem. When you walk through the streets, I love walking through the streets of Yerushalayim. It's not even worthwhile taking a taxi or a sherut or a bus or whatever else. Just walk through the streets of Yerushalayim. And what I always marvel about is the two sides of Yerushalayim. You can walk through Geula and Mea Sha'arim, and that's one experience of Yerushalayim. And just up the road, you walk up to Rehov Yafo, Jaffa Street, and King George Street, and Kikar Tzion, and the Midrachov, and the center town of Yerushalayim, and it's a whole new area of Yerushalayim. Two different worlds of Jerusalem. So my question is, I would dare to say, do we love each other? Israelis love each other. They do. They love each other because Ani Israeli, V'ata Israeli. I'm Israeli and you're Israeli. We love each other. You know where we see it most? We see it most when we are traveling overseas. When we travel overseas, that's when you start to see the love between Israelis, the love between Yidden and Jews and people. But do we respect each other? That's a whole different ballgame. Go ask the Mea Sha'arim Geula community, do you respect the Rehov Yafo community? Or go ask the Rehov Yafo community, do you respect the Mea Sha'arim Geula community? I don't respect them. They're off their walls. They're crazy. How could you respect their stance? And their stand. So I love them, I can love them. Anachnu kulam, we're the same people. We're God's people. We're the Jewish people. Israelim, we're Israelis. We love each other. I can't respect your position. Like says Trevor, like one who says, I like you, but your behavior I don't like. Good. So I like you, I love you, but I can't respect your position. Rabbi Akiva's students were all very holy. Absolutely holy. And they were students of Rabbi Akiva who preached Ahava. Love. And in fact, the sages tell us that they loved each other so much, so angry with the other person when they couldn't understand their stance. If you don't do what I do, I get angry with you. That's the risk. The balance of love and respect. I love you so much that you have to do what I'm doing. You've got to do it my way because I love you so much that you have to see it the way I see it. That's the risk of ahava. That's the risk of love. The risk of unity is thinking that it's uniformity, that we all have to be uniformed and one in order to gain my respect. They're all learning Rabbi Akiva's Torah. They're all studying his wise wisdom. But one understood it this way and one understood it that way. And now the question is, how will the two camps get along? Do they love each other? Absolutely. Do they respect each other? That's another question. And so I think if you think about the challenges of the Jewish community of today, because we got to take lessons from the pandemic of 1900 years ago, of the breathing system that killed out 24,000 students. We got to think to ourselves, what can we do to ensure our safety and our security and our health? And one way of doing it is by respecting one another. Rabbi Akiva's students didn't show respect to each other, and therefore they died. We've got to show respect. Communities are different. Minhagim and customs are different. But that's okay. It's okay. We don't just love each other. We respect that your stance is different to my stance. And my stance is different to your stance. I heard a beautiful story about a Hasidic Rebbe, I think of Vishnitz, if I'm not mistaken. He was living in Tel Aviv, or wherever the communities were then. And on one particular occasion, while he was crossing the road, he went into a jewelry store. And it was the wife of the owner, that was there to greet people. And she calls out her husband to tell the husband, look who's here, a great Rebbe. The great Hasidic Rebbe is here to buy jewelry. So they asked the Rebbe, what are you looking for? He says, I'm looking for a piece of jewelry for my wife, but I prefer to have a lady's touch. So call back your wife, because I prefer her touch, her taste, that she can tell us what my wife would appreciate. And they choose a particular piece. And the Rebbe pulls out the money and he pays them for the piece of jewelry. And the owners couldn't just say goodbye. They said, Rebbe, please tell us why today over all other days. Ma nishtana hayom hazeh. What happened today that you're looking to buy your wife jewelry suddenly today? And the Rebbe explains, to be honest, it's not really the piece of jewelry I'm looking for. But I happened to be passing by here the other day. And I heard the owner, Mr. the Sir, talking to his wife. And saying to his wife, what are you doing here? You're wasting our time. I'm paying you a wage. You haven't brought in clients. You haven't sold any pieces of jewelry. Why must you sit and waste money? Go home. And it hit me. And I wanted to show how the missus is adding so much value to the shop and to the sales. And because of that, I decided to come in today to buy a piece of jewelry for my wife. And I want specifically Mrs., your wife's assistance, because she has the touch to be able to choose the right piece of jewelry for my wife. That's a story of sensitivity. That's a story of respect, not just love, but respect. That's what we need to hear more of today. Today, we need to hear more of these stories of one community helping the other, of one individual helping the other, to correct the ways of Rabbi Akiva's students. Rabbi Akiva's students lo nahagu kavod ze bazeh. They didn't show respect. They had ahava. Rabbi Akiva was a teacher of ahava. They had love. They didn't have respect. And so today's message, as I conclude, is to find room to show respect, to acknowledge difference. Love, we all love each other. To respect each other, that's the test. Any questions or comments before we wrap up for this morning? I'd love to hear from you. Just post them in the chat, in the comments, and we can continue. And hopefully that message is something to take away as we go into Shabbos. Arnold Orkin, thank you for joining. As we go into Shabbos, it should be a beautiful Shabbos for us all. We should practice the verse of this week's parasha, V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, loving a fellow like yourself and showing respect and dignity to the other. Please God, that will bring shalom bayit and peace to us all, to ourselves, to our families, to our communities, to our entire country, to the world around. Good morning, Hilly Lipworth. Thank you very much. Thank you, Arlene Udolovitz. And as I conclude, just to invite you all, thank you, Trevor, to invite you all to this afternoon's pre-Shabbos Kabbalat Shabbat. I'm going to post it on our chats right now, the pre-Shabbos Kabbalat Shabbat. If you would like to join us, you can sign up. If you're on the Shul WhatsApp group or emails, you obviously got the link already for the event this afternoon. But if you're not, here is the link. I've just posted the link on Facebook, and I'm going to post the link on YouTube as well. Thank you, Stanley Braz and Michael Stain. We'd love to have you this afternoon at 4:30. We have two guests joining the Sidman team. Rabbi Shimon Freundlich of China, Beijing, China, will be joining us today, as well as Connie G will be joining us too. So I've just put the link on Facebook and YouTube. If you would like to join our pre-Shabbat Kabbalat Shabbat, please sign up. Those of you that got the link already, either via WhatsApp or email, you don't need to sign up because you have the link already. So just to log on. But those of you who don't have the link, I'm not going to post the link here. So rather just sign up via that link I just put through, and we'll see you back on Zoom and YouTube. We'll have Zoom and YouTube this afternoon. Zoom and YouTube this afternoon. Thank you to all. And we wish you all a Shabbat Shalom. Thank you for joining. We'll be back Sunday morning, 10:30 a.m., same place, same time. Shabbat Shalom.